2023, y'all.
What's up?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
What's up?
What's up? It's been like forever since we recorded.
Yeah, thank you everybody who has stuck with us.
Yes.
So yeah, welcome to another awesome week of Case Files with Kat.
And Ashley.
Oh, we missed you.
Oh, I missed you and all of you.
And all of you. The royal we. Yeah. So anyway, how was your holiday?
It was amazing. I had so much fun surprising my mom.
That's so
fun. The fact that she remained surprised was great.
I love the video of her falling back.
Stomping her little feet.
So cute. So cute. Well, I'm glad that you had a good time. It
was cold and snowy, so it was in my element.
Love it.
I love it.
Well,
it was great.
We froze here.
I know, but it didn't snow.
It didn't snow. No.
It was actually colder here than it was in Utah the whole time I was gone.
Oh, wow. That's shocking.
Yeah.
That's shocking. As Sarah would say. So listen, I have a big story tonight.
Yes.
I only have. Yeah. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking a Wiener.
Okay. A Wiener?
A Wiener Lager. It's another one of those beers from my beer advocate box, my advent calendar for beers.
They said advocate.
I know, I did say advocate.
Oh, okay. I'm not deaf. Okay, that's good.
No, that is what I accidentally originally said, yes.
Accidentally.
I was trying to move forward, but thank you.
It's been 2 weeks.
It's really, really good. It's easy to drink. It's 5.1%, and it's another German beer, and it's just delicious.
Oh, wow.
What are you drinking? Your can looks super fancy.
My can is a little bit fancy. It's from Backfish Brewing Company called Defying Gravity, and I will not start singing for you Broadway people, but I just learned today that they closed on New Year's Eve. Yeah. So that was super sad. So I was like, well, here, no, I'm not going to pour anything out, but, theoretically pouring one out for my homies over at Backfish. So sorry to see it go. A lot of good breweries
come and go, unfortunately.
Going down this year. But other good breweries coming up.
Yes.
So I'm excited to go try them out. I remember when I used to go to breweries a lot. Those were the days.
It's okay. I drink enough for all of us.
I don't know if that's good or not. Okay, so I really do. I have a big story, and I'm watching the time.
We have new fancy fangle equipment.
I got this for Christmas.
I know.
Even the 3D printed holder for it.
Super fancy.
I know. It was like really cool. That's a cool present. Thanks, babe. Thanks, Wizard. Okay, so tonight I am going to tell a story that is horrific. I had never heard about it before, but as we were saying before we started recording, I received a lot of serial killer coloring books and activity books and cold case puzzle books. It's like... maybe I have a problem, or maybe they just don't know what else to shop for me, I guess. I don't know. But the kids hooked me up.
Love it.
With the activity books. But there was a trivia book. And it's a fascinating read. I'm having a good time. Not that. Having a good time going through it, because it is actually was printed, it came out in September of 2022, so it's a really new book.
Oh, wow.
I should have had it right here, but there's just lots of really good just explanations of things, the different kinds of serial killers, things like that. But they're giving examples of killers, and I'm like, well, I don't know who that is. So I pull, Google this serial killer. I probably have 20 tabs on my phone open of different Google tabs of all these, I never heard of that guy. Who's that guy? And so I was like, man, I'm losing some street cred in the true crime community. But this did not happen in the United States. This takes place in and around Manchester, England. And so this is the story of the Moors murders. And it was a spree killing, I guess, or it was like they were serial killers in 1963 and 64. And it was a couple named Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. And so I will just jump into the sort of backstory of the two. There was a lot written about them. Like, I didn't, honestly, like, I wasn't interested in reading books about them to explain their hard upbringing or, you know, to, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
Like, they were, you know, I don't know. I didn't care that much to do that, but there was enough written in some of the UK papers and things like that. So there was enough. There was enough out there. I didn't feel like I needed to really delve deep into either one of these atrocious people. Anyway, okay, so we'll start with Ian Brady. Ian Brady was actually born in Glasgow, Scotland, and he was born Ian Duncan Stewart on January 2nd, 1938. So the crimes didn't necessarily happen at the beginning of January, but this motherfucker was born. So I kind of feel like that was a crime.
Yeah.
So he was born to Peggy Stewart, and she was an unmarried tea room waitress.
What a harlot.
We don't have those here. But we don't have tea rooms here like that. Like a tea room, you know, like that's so fancy.
Well, we do have a tea room.
Well, they're not the same.
Not like their tea rooms.
No, this is,
like the legit tea room.
Legit tea rooms. Our tea rooms are sad things. It's not 100% known who his dad was, but she says that he was a reporter working for the Glasgow newspaper and died 3 months before Ian was born. So, well, sounds legit. Sure. I mean, I'll take her word for it. She seemed nice. But poor thing didn't have a lot of support. Like, she didn't have a family that really supported her.
You're talking about the mother?
Yeah.
Okay. Peggy. Okay.
So Peggy didn't have a lot of support, and after a few months, she had to give Ian up to another couple, the Sloans, who already had 4 children of their own, but they were able to provide, and so Ian ended up taking their surname, so he became Ian Sloan. His mother, though, stayed in his life. She continued to visit him, so he always knew that was Mom.
Right.
And she just couldn't care for him, right? But I'm sure that was hard for a kid to understand 100%. At 9, he visited Scotland with his family, and he discovered that he had an affinity for the outdoors, kind of into being outside. And a few months later, the family moved to a new council house at Pollock, and various writers have said that this is where he began to torture animals.
Oh my gosh.
He would disagree. He said, that's not true. I never did that. But like, I think people just kind of
I feel like if he was doing it, he would have admitted to it, because those kinds of people admit to all kinds of stuff.
Yes. But I think, and it makes me think of like Israel Keys, right? Like, he didn't deny any of that kind of stuff.
Right.
But also I feel like people want to make sure that there's like some boxes to check to find why did this kid turn out as bad as he turned out?
I feel like a lot of people that do that admit to it because they don't view it as wrong. Like, we would view killing animals as wrong, but those people in that kind of mindset don't view it as like psychotic like we do.
Yeah. Oh, and then that's lots of stuff in the book about stuff like that. Psychopathy. Woo, there's a lot. There's some deep dives in there. It was reported, for example, that Brady boasted of killing his first cat when he was 10, and then went on to burn another cat alive, stone dogs, and cut off rabbits' heads. So these were all the stories that were going around. He ended up going to the Shawlands Academy, a school for above average pupils. He was not a dummy. So Brady's behavior worsened while he was at Shawlands. As a teenager, he went to juvie. He was in front of the juvenile court twice for breaking into a house. He left the academy when he was 15. So it was like he wasn't there that long. And he ended up taking a job as a tea boy. So he ended up doing the same thing. And that was at a shipyard, at a place. That was a tea room at a shipyard. So 9 months later, he began working as a butcher's messenger boy.
Oh, I can already see where this is going.
I was just like, whoop, that's it. I don't know. I don't know why I thought the same thing when I was reading about it, right? At this point, Brady had a girlfriend, Evelyn Grant, but that relationship ended when he threatened her with a knife for going somewhere with another boy. So that was like the end of that. I was like, oh, didn't take much. So then he appeared before the court, this time 9 charges, with 9 charges against him. So right before his 17th birthday, he was placed on probation on condition that he live with his mother. So there's a picture.
His birth mother.
Mm-hmm. So there's a picture of Peggy and Ian around this time. There are links in the show notes to some of the pictures. Really, some of the pictures that they've unearthed are pretty amazing. Anyway, so they moved to Manchester, and Peggy married an Irish fruit merchant named Patrick Brady, and he got Ian a job at the market, and Ian ended up taking Brady's surname. So he took everyone's last name. Sure, I'll take your last name. So within a year of moving to Manchester, he was caught stealing. He was sent to a place called Strangeways. It's kind of little on the nose.
Interesting name.
It's actually now called His Majesty's, not Her Majesty's, His Majesty's, because it's the king now.
Yeah.
So, His Majesty's Prison, Manchester. But before it was called Strangeways.
So fancy, though.
It's a fancy name for a prison. Anyway, so that was in Manchester. It's commonly referred to as Strangeways, which was its formal name. But it was rebuilt following a major riot in 1990. So it looks old. They still kept the...
Go take pictures, Glenn.
Okay, so as he was still under 18, Brady was sentenced to 2 years in a youth detention facility for training, in quotation marks. But he was drunk on some alcohol that he brewed. He was not a dummy.
Yeah.
Like he knew how to do stuff, but didn't put it to good use. He was moved to a much tougher unit, which is never a good thing. And he was released eventually on November 14th, 1957. He returned to Manchester, got a laboring job, which he hated, and he was dismissed from another job at a brewery. So if only he could use his powers for good.
Yeah.
Deciding to better himself, that's a quote, he obtained some instruction manuals and self-taught. He taught himself on how to be a bookkeeper.
Oh.
And so he's just like, okay, well, I'm going to learn how to do this. So he would like actually study on his own to get a better job. In January 1959, he applied for and got a clerical job. And he was quiet. He was punctual. He was short-tempered, but he didn't really ruffle any feathers there. But he started to read books like Teach Yourself German and Mein Kampf. So
interesting choices, yes.
Lots of works about the Nazi atrocities. And he rode a motorcycle, and he was just this real tough dude. Skinny, but tough. Okay, so that's Ian.
Okay.
Now, Myra, she was born in Crumpsall in July 1942 to Nellie and Bob Hindley, and then ended up moving to a working class area of Manchester, kind of slum housing, Victorian slum housing. Her dad was abusive. He was an alcoholic and was really violent towards her and the other kids and his wife. And the family home was in really, really bad condition. She was forced to sleep in a single bed next to her parents' double bed. So it ended up getting even worse when Hindley's sister Maureen was born, and the following year, Myra was sent to live with her grandmother because there wasn't enough room anymore. So Hindley's dad actually served with the Parachute Regiment and was stationed in North Africa, Cyprus, and Italy during the Second World War. He was a tough man. He was known to be a tough man in the army. Like in the army, you're a tough dude.
Yeah.
And he expected his daughter to be equally as tough. And so he taught her to fight. He insisted that she stick up for herself. When she was 8, a boy scratched her cheeks and she burst into tears, ran home to daddy. And he's like, get the fuck out of here. Go kick his ass. So she did. She went over there and whooped this boy up.
Great parenting.
Fight your own fights. Yeah. She said, she wrote later, at 8 years old, I scored my first victory.
I feel like this girl, I don't know what she did, but I feel like she didn't stand a chance from the beginning. I'm not saying whatever she did was right. I'm just saying I feel like
I think
she didn't stand a chance.
The treatment of her father really messed her up. Yeah. So there's probably more. I still didn't want to read a book about her. A whole book. You know, didn't want to do that. So in June of 1957, one of Hindley's closest friends, 13-year-old Michael Higgins, invited Hindley to go swimming at a local reservoir, and she decided not to, and she went out with another friend to go somewhere else. And that friend who invited her to go swimming ended up drowning and dying because he wasn't as strong of a swimmer as she was. And so she felt super fucking guilty. Yeah, she took that hard because she was like, I should have gone. It's my fault. It's my fault.
I feel like this is as much of one of those nature. Oh God, I can't say the word.
Nature versus nurture.
Nurture. There we go. God damn. I feel like it's a nurture situation in her case.
Sure, you're starting to feel sorry for her. You're starting to feel sorry for her.
I know, and I hate it.
Yeah, because I know. We'll just wait. So the funeral service was at St. Francis Monastery, and this is where she was baptized Catholic in 1942. And that had a really long-lasting effect on her. Her dad wanted her to go have a Catholic baptism and be raised Catholic, but she didn't want her to go to Catholic school because she said, quote, all the monks taught was catechism. So like you're only learning how to be a Catholic. You're not learning how to be a functioning member of society kind of a thing.
Right.
But she was increasingly drawn to the church throughout the rest of her life. And she began taking instruction of formal reception into the church after Higgins' funeral. And she took the confirmation name of Veronica and received her first communion in November 1958. So her first job was a junior clerk at a local electrical engineering firm. And she was basically the secretary, ran errands, made tea, copies, that kind of thing, typed. And she was well liked, and even enough so that when she lost her first paycheck, the other girls fundraised and got her money. Yeah.
Wow.
Like she was nice enough that everyone else liked her that much.
Yeah.
Right. To do that. She became engaged after dating this other young man, like for just a little bit of time. But then she decided he was too immature. And so she broke off the engagement. She's like, it doesn't make sense that she sounds so like
put together.
Yeah. But for a second he was unable to provide the life that she wanted. That's why he was too immature. So she took a job at Bratby and Hincliffe, an engineering company in Gorton, but was dismissed for absenteeism after 6 months. Okay. So in January of 1961, the two meet. Anne and Myra meet. And she's 18 at this point. And he joined Millwards, is where she was working at the time, as a typist. And she just took one look at him and she was like obsessed. She just was like, that was it. He was everything. Just visually, that's it. So she just finally like,
yeah, he's it.
She was obsessed. And she began a diary. She had dates with other men, but it would always turn to Brady. Like her writing always turned to him. She eventually spoke to him. So that was in January. She eventually spoke to him in July.
Wow. I'm impressed they both held a job.
So over the next few months, she was making new entries, but she was talking to him, but they weren't on dates yet.
Yeah.
So they finally had the first conversation, and then she was like, well, dude, this guy's never going to ask me out. But then in December, he did. He asked her on a date to the cinema.
Oh.
And they went to go see The Judgment at Nuremberg. And
sounds like a hot date.
Hot date. She remembers it as going to see King of Kings since it was Christmas time. But their dates followed a regular pattern: a trip to the cinema, usually to watch an X-rated film, and then go back to Hindley's for a drink, to drink German wine, and then Brady then giving her reading material, and he was basically teaching her all about white nationalism and things like that, and she was just soaking it up.
Yeah,
she was like, whatever you're interested in, I'm interested in. And they would read aloud to one another books about the Nazis, like the atrocities, and I guess that was like foreplay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
She began to change. She was a brunette. She dyed her hair platinum blonde. She wore bright red lipstick. She was trying to be the Aryan, the picture perfect Aryan woman, right? And so that's what she started to do. She expressed some concern at some aspects of Brady's character. When she wrote a letter to a friend, she mentioned an incident where she had been drugged by Brady, but then also wrote about how obsessed she is with him. So she couldn't make up her mind.
That's weird that he would have to drug her, considering she was so obsessed with him.
Yeah. So within months, this is what she wrote in her plea for parole. She wrote, within months, Brady had convinced me that there was no God at all. He could have told me that the earth was flat, the moon was made of green cheese, and the sun rose in the west. I would have believed him. Such was his power of persuasion. So she began wearing high boots and short skirts and leather jackets, and she stopped really hanging out with her colleagues. They were regulars at the library, borrowing books of philosophy, crime, and torture. And they also read works by the Marquis de Sade, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. She wasn't a qualified driver, like she didn't have a driver's license, but she passed her test in November 1963 after failing the test 3 times. So she wasn't really a good driver. But she needed to rent vans. And in these vans, they were planning on robbing banks so that they could have all the money that they wanted to support themselves. So homeboy number 1 didn't make enough money to support her. If he'd only had the idea to rob banks, then she might have stuck around.
Maybe that's the key to life.
I mean,
finding a partner who will rob banks with you.
But then they were like, you know what? No, let's not do that. Like they even
Louis wants to rob banks.
He's just yelling at me. So they went to like the rifle clubs and were learning how to shoot guns, and they were all about it. But they decided, no, robbing banks isn't the way to go. Murder is.
Yes, definitely. I see that being. I see that being
Step
the next
one.
step. Step 1.
Step 2.
Good relationships. Step 1, rob bank. Step 2, murder. My whole life makes a lot more sense now.
I can see where I've gone wrong.
Yes.
I can see
it now.
So they also liked, they used to take photographs of each other, obviously some like pornographic ones,
Sure.
but there's lots of pictures that he took of her, and vice versa. But, yeah, you don't see the nudie ones. So the murders. Okay. I need this. I need a sip. This is a lot.
So they did actually take the murder step, is what you're saying.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm
Just
telling the story.
totally skipped the bank robbing.
Totally, they were just like, no, money. No, let's do murder. And that
Perfect.
And really, honestly, I was just like, oh god, they're gonna go around like killing like non-white people, and no, they were all white. Like, what kind of white nationalists are you?
That's very weird. That's
So
not
weird.
where I saw this story going.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so Hindley would claim that Brady began talking about committing the perfect murder in July of 1963. Sorry. I had a yawn right there. So he began talking about it in 1963. And so she says that was in July, but in June 1963, Brady had moved in with Hindley at her grandmother's house. So I kind of feel like it must have started around then, but because it's on the 12th of July, 1963, that he told her he wanted to commit the perfect murder. And after work, he instructed her to drive this rented van that they were used to renting around while he followed her on his motorcycle. When he spotted a likely victim, he would flash his headlights. So they were driving down Gorton Lane. Brady saw a young girl, like an 8-year-old, flash his lights. But Hindley kept driving because she's like, that's a neighbor. And no, not gonna, like, she knows me.
Yeah.
No, not gonna do that. But sometime after 7:30 on Froxmer Street, Brady signaled again, and they stopped for a 16-year-old girl named Pauline Reade. She was a schoolmate of Myra's sister, Maureen, and she was on her way to a dance. And Hindley offered Reade a lift. She also knew her. I'm not really sure what the problem was.
Maybe it's
age.
She was afraid at first of the age, maybe?
I don't know. At various times, Hindley gave conflicting statements about that, because she would say she didn't pick the 8-year-old because a 16-year-old wouldn't be as missed as an 8-year-old, or it wouldn't draw as much attention as an 8-year-old. And I mean, a cute little 8-year-old versus like a teenager who could be a runaway.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's why. Yeah. That's why. So that's the reason. So once Reade was in the van, this was kind of the same MO with every single one. So they'd get the said child, and then they would say, "Hey, we're gonna go do I'll drive you home," and then they would say, "Oh, we need to make a detour," and then they would make a detour and like, "Well, you know what? I lost a glove. Will you help me go look for this glove over at this spot?" And they were on like it's called the Moor, so like rolling hills. It's very nice. Saddleworth Moor. She was like, "Okay, I'll help you look." And so he would go alone with the person, and then come back alone with a shovel.
Okay.
So he had this shovel there.
Yeah. Okay.
So he knew exactly where to take them.
Right.
Like he'd been planning this for a while.
Right. But she wouldn't go with him.
She would not go with him. So after 30 minutes, he returned back by himself, and she'd been nearly decapitated. I'm sorry, I lost my spot. It says Hindley later claimed that she waited in the van while Brady took Reade onto the moor. Brady returned alone after about 30 minutes and took Hindley to the spot where Reade lay dying. Reade's clothes were in disarray, and she had been nearly decapitated by 2 cuts to the throat, including a 4-inch incision across her voice box, inflicted with considerable force. It sounds like it was with that shovel.
Yeah.
Onto which the collar of her coat and a throat chain had been pushed in. So it was like with enough force that all of that went inside of the cut. Hindley stayed with Reade while Brady retrieved a shovel he had hidden nearby on a previous visit, and then returned to the van while Brady buried Reade. When she was found, she still had on all of her party dress and her coat and everything. She was found. In Brady's account, Hindley was not only present for the attack, but participated in the sexual assault. So, who are you going to believe?
Story is depressing.
I know. So as I mentioned earlier, Pauline went to school with Maureen, Myra's sister.
Yes.
And had also been in a short relationship with David Smith, a local boy who had some criminal past, who had seen Reade before she disappeared, but he was cleared of any involvement in her death. So just David Smith, remember the name. So their next victim, John Kilbride, was killed on November 23rd. So in the early evening at a market in Ashton-under-Lyne. It's Ashton-under-Lynn.
I think it's interesting they didn't just kill females.
Yeah, huh?
Usually, I'm just saying those are it's usually one gender.
This seemed to be a what was convenient.
Gotcha. Sorry, I'll stop interrupting.
No, I just think like, yeah, that is true. There isn't like a brunette with long straight hair,
right,
kind of a thing. Yeah. So on the 23rd of November, Brady and Hindley offered 12-year-old John Kilbride a ride home, saying his parents might worry that he was out so late. They also promised him a bottle of sherry, but they said they'd have to go to their house to get the sherry first. But first they would need to also go back to find the glove that's on the moor. And can he help? I mean, it just seems too easy, right?
I'm sorry, but that just seems like a really dumb...
A glove?
I don't know. I'm not blaming the people that went with them. They didn't have a choice, probably. But I mean, like, that's just such a weird thing to say. I lost my glove. Come help me.
Yeah, I lost my puppy. I mean, that seems...
I feel like, yeah, that would definitely get more people, like, willing.
But they were already in the car, and they were already going
Well, that's
somewhere.
what I'm saying. I don't blame the people, right?
Oh, yeah, no.
Like,
they were
probably going to go there one way or the other, right?
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah. They didn't even have to be told a lie.
Right.
But it's the same lie.
Yeah.
Not very creative.
So weird.
Not creative at all. So Hindley, when they reached the moor, Brady took Kilbride with him while Hindley waited in the car. In her version of the stories, she's never there. Or she never sees anything. She's never there. So Brady sexually assaulted Kilbride, tried to slit his throat with a 6-inch serrated blade before strangling him with a shoelace. So at this point, a huge search was undertaken. 700 statements were taken. 500 missing person posters were printed. After 8 days, 2,000 volunteers scoured waste ground and like derelict buildings, thinking maybe he was just, that close. Hindley, again, was renting a van. And on the 21st of December, apparently, to make sure that everything at Saddleworth Moor was still the undisturbed, she was driving by to make sure that the burial sites were still there and untouched. In February of 64, she bought a secondhand Austin Traveler, but soon after traded it for a minivan. She needed more room. And then, okay, number 3. Early in the evening on June 16th, 1964, Hindley asked 12-year-old Keith Bennett, who was on his way to his grandmother's house, asked him for help in loading some boxes into her minivan. And he helped. Oh. But Brady was in the back of the van. So that was quick.
How old was this? How old was he?
He was 12.
Oh my God.
So Hindley drove to the rest area over by the moor, Saddleworth Moor, and he went off with Bennett looking for a lost glove. And after about 30 minutes, Brady returned alone, carrying a spade shovel, and that he had, of course, hidden earlier. I mean, it's like the same thing every single time. Hindley did say when she had asked him, did you sexually assault him? He's like, of course I did.
Of course. Duh.
And he also strangled him with a piece of string or shoelace. Keith Bennett disappeared. His stepfather, Jimmy, became a suspect right away. Because I guess he was his stepfather. I don't know. But in the 2 years after the disappearance, Johnson was taken for questioning on 4 different occasions. They searched the floorboards. Under the floorboards, they found out that the row of houses was like connected with some tunnels or something. And so they were like checking all the houses. Like, he must have gotten rid of him through here. They searched the entire street.
Can you imagine going through all that and not actually having done it? Like, you were not guilty whatsoever. Like, it just...
I wonder if there wasn't some behavior.
Yeah.
Like, who pointed to him?
Yeah.
You know, someone did. And then did they stay married? Probably not. So they went and they searched the entire street, not to be found. So at this point, Henley's sister Maureen married David Smith on August 15th, 1964. Weird. Isn't that weird?
That is very weird.
It was really quick. Happened really, really quickly. None of Maureen's relatives attended. Hindley didn't approve of the marriage, and
can't imagine why. But
also, I don't know, high pot, meat kettle, you know, that kind of thing. Anyway, she didn't approve of the marriage, and her mother was too embarrassed as Maureen was 7 months pregnant. So she had
the horror.
The whore or the whore?
Both.
Okay.
Maybe it's because they didn't commit murder before the wedding.
Right. Oh, yeah.
They missed that fucking step.
They didn't. Robbery.
Embarrassment to the family.
So they moved into Smith's dad's house. The next day, Brady suggested that the 4 take a day trip to Windermere. This was the first time Brady and Smith had met properly, and Brady was apparently impressed by Smith's demeanor. I think I think Smith sort of fanboyed on Ian a little bit, not realizing that like what he had done. And I think that Ian liked the attention.
Yeah.
And the sort of like, I'm someone's hero kind of a feeling, right? So they became close friends. But I wonder what it felt like to find out what happened. Yeah, because he was like paying for the food and paying for wine, and he was, Brady was like hot shit. And so David Smith was like, yeah, this guy, the older guy, is so cool. So in 64, Hindley, her grandmother, and Brady were rehoused. And this is something that I looked at. So they were rehoused as part of a post-war slum clearances in Manchester. So they were trying to get people out of the bad area. And so they were rehoused to 16 Whortlebrook Avenue. And Brady and Hindley became friendly with Patricia Hodges. Patricia Hodges was an 11-year-old girl who lived not too far away. And she sometimes went with the couple to the moor, but not to look for a lost glove. They actually just were nice to her. They played.
How bizarre.
I know. They played with her and they were really, really nice. But she only lived a few doors away. So according to Hindley, it's too close.
But that's weird. They would take her as, like, her parents just let an 11-year-old go with these two adults randomly all the time.
I'm sure they, like,
I don't know.
befriended
Weird,
the family. I'm sure. I don't think it was like day one.
I know, but that's still weird to let your 11-year-old daughter just go off with this couple in a van for hours, and you don't know where they're going.
Bye.
I don't know. It's just weird.
So early on December 26th, 1964, also Boxing Day, Hindley left her grandmother at a relative's house and refused to allow her back home.
Oh my God.
This is number 4. She refused to allow her back home that night because Brady and Hindley had gone to a fun fair in Ancoats and noticed that 10-year-old Lesley Ann Downey was apparently alone. She was this beautiful, beautiful child. Like, it's unreal. Just this picture perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, just beautiful child. They approached her, dropped their bag of groceries or whatever, and asked her for help, like on purpose.
Right.
And then they took her to their car and then to where they lived with their grandmother, but that's why she wasn't there. At the house, she was undressed, gagged, and forcibly posed for photographs before being raped and killed. Brady would say that Hindley killed Downey, but she maintained that she went to fill a bath for Downey. When she came back, she was dead. So she's never in the room. She never sees anything.
I don't believe that at all.
I mean,
maybe in the beginning, but I don't feel like you're in the same house.
So the photograph, she said she was looking out of a window. She didn't see the photographs being taken.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
It's like
how delusional do you think other people are?
How dumb. How dumb. This is why I'm like, I can't believe you feel sorry for her. You feel sorry for her. You're not going to feel sorry for her.
Right, at the beginning, right?
Yeah. So the following morning, they drove Downey's body to the moor and buried her there in a shallow grave. So by February 1965, Hodges is the other little girl. She stopped visiting Ian and Brady.
You're talking about the 11-year-old.
The other
the one that they were friendly with.
Yes.
Okay.
But David Smith was a regular visitor, so he was always coming around. Brady gave Smith books to read, and they talked about robbery and murder. He's like a broken record, dude. And
I mean, to be fair, we talk a lot about murder and robbery and read books about it. But I'm not visiting any moors or anything.
I mean, I'm not burying bodies.
I do go to the gun range.
Like talking about committing those crimes.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
I suppose that's the difference.
That's it. And therein lies the rub. Okay, so for Hindley's 23rd birthday, her sister and brother-in-law had until then been living with relatives, and then they ended up moving not too far away from where Ian and Myra were living, and so they got to see each other a lot more often. And but they were usually like on Brady's terms, like if he wanted to go watch a Nazi film or whatever, that's what they would be doing. So during the 90s, Myra actually claimed that she took part in the killings only because Brady drugged her. I think that's a lie. Was blackmailing her with photographic evidence, photographic pictures that he took, those porno pictures that they were taking of each other. He kept all of them. And so he was using that over her, or he said he would kill Maureen if she didn't comply with his wishes. I'm not saying none of that could be true. I don't think that was really the reason. I think she was obsessed with him.
Yeah.
And wanted his approval.
Right.
And it sounds like she wasn't the only one. Kind of feels like David
Smith. He seems like he charms people really well.
Ugh. Anyway, in 2008, Hindley's solicitor, her lawyer, Andrew McCooey, reported that she told him, "I ought to have been hanged. I deserved it. My crime was worse than Brady's because I enticed the children and they would have never entered the car without my role. I have always regarded myself as worse than Brady."
Wait, how did they get caught?
I'll tell you.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry. My bad.
So this is okay. So that was 4. Now number 5.
Oh, okay. Oh my God, there's more?
This is the last one. Okay. On the evening of the 6th of October, 1965 now, Hindley drove Brady to Manchester Central Railway Station. She waited outside in the car, always. He chose his victim, and it was a 17-year-old, Edward Evans, and he was an apprentice engineer, and he introduced Myra as his sister. So come back to the car. You can meet my sister. Brady later claimed that he had picked up Evans for a sexual encounter. So they drove to Brady and Hindley's home where they relaxed over a bottle of wine. At some point, Brady sent Myra to fetch David Smith. And so she did. So she went and she got him. Which I think was probably their downfall. Hindley returned with Smith and told him to wait outside for her signal, a flashing light. When the signal came, Smith knocked on the door and was met by Brady, who asked if he had come for the miniature wine bottles, and left him in the kitchen, saying that he was going to collect the wine. Smith later told the police, quote, "I waited about a minute or two, then suddenly I heard a hell of a scream. It sounded like a woman, really high-pitched. Then the screams carried on, one after another, really loud. Then I heard Myra shout, 'Dave, help him!' very loud. When I ran in, I just stood inside the living room and saw a young lad. He was lying with his head and shoulders on the couch, and his legs were on the floor. He was facing upwards. Ian was standing over him, facing him, with his legs on either side of the young lad's legs. The lad was screaming. Ian had a hatchet in his hand. He was holding it up above his head, and he hit the lad on the left side of his head with the hatchet. I heard the blow. It was a terrible, hard blow. It sounded horrible. Smith then watched Brady throttle Evans with the length of an electrical cord. He sprained his ankle. Brady sprained his own ankle in the struggle, and Evans' body was too heavy for Smith to carry to the car on his own. So they wrapped it up in a plastic sheeting and put it in the spare bedroom. So the next morning, Smith said, "Okay, I'm going to go get the stroller, my kid's stroller, and that's how we're going to get this body out of here." Like, they didn't think it through very well, right? Just awful. Okay, so he arrived home at 3 a.m., Smith. After all of this, he arrived home at 3 a.m. and asked his wife to make a cup of tea, which he drank before vomiting and telling her everything. By 6:10 in the morning, having waited for daylight and armed himself with a screwdriver and a bread knife, in case Brady was planning to hurt him, Smith called police from a phone box, and he was picked up by the police car. And he went to Hyde Police Station where he told the officers.
Oh my God, good for him.
Everything. He almost didn't do it though, right?
Right, but good for him.
Whew.
Good for him for thinking of how to get out of that situation.
People don't like him. All right. We'll get to that. Okay, so Superintendent Bob Talbot. Oh, I better speed up. Superintendent Bob Talbot of the Stalybridge Police Division went to the house. So they went to go see everything. He was wearing a bread delivery man's overalls on top of his uniform. He asked Hindley at the back door if her husband was home. When she denied that she had a husband or that there was a man even in the house, that's when he identified himself as a police officer. And she led him into the living room where Brady was there, and with his ankle injury. Talbot explained that he was investigating an act of violence, and that was reported to have taken place the previous evening. Hindley denied that there was any violence and allowed police to look around the house. When police asked for a key to the locked spare bedroom, she said it was at work. These people think people are dumb. But after police offered to take her to retrieve it, Brady told her, just open the door. They're going to find it anyway. When police returned to the living room, they arrested Brady on suspicion of murder. As he was getting dressed, he said, Eddie and I had a row, and the situation got out of hand. Yeah. Sure. So Hindley wasn't initially arrested, but she was like right there with him through the whole ordeal.
Right.
So it was sort of like eventually it came out that she was a part of it. And on October 11th, she too was arrested and taken into custody. They also found that there was an old exercise book, and it had John Kilbride's name in it. So that connected them to him. And then there was other stuff that was found. I'm trying to skip through this. I'm sorry. Brady had asked Smith to get rid of anything dodgy that might make them look even worse. So any like writing.
So they didn't suspect he was the one that turned him in.
No, I mean, the walls aren't that thick, I don't think.
Yeah.
I mean, they're kind of stacked next to each other. So it could have been anything, right? Someone said there was a sound of a gun, but that was just them lying.
Right.
The sound of a hatchet hitting a head would be pretty fucking loud. Pretty loud. They also found a luggage suitcase key that had stuff in it, and so they were able to find more, like a prayer book inside one of the cases, and it had a pornographic picture of Downey that they had taken inside of the, like as a bookmark.
Yeah.
Yuck. And then they also found it was at the railway station. So like they were putting things there. That was like their safety deposit box. And so they also found how long was it? A 16-minute audio tape recording of Downey begging to like go home.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the whole thing. She was screaming, she was crying, and her mom actually confirmed that it was indeed her on that tape.
Oh my God, they made her listen to that.
It was played in court. Mm-hmm. Yep. So officers started making inquiries to the neighbors. They come across Patricia Hodges, 12-year-old now. She had on several occasions been taken to the Saddleworth Moor by Brady and Hindley, and she was able to point out like their favorite places that they would go. They would go to the moor, and she would be like, and this is where he likes to go. And so they began to search the area, and on the 16th of October, they found an arm bone protruding from the ground. They thought it was Kilbride's, but they found out the next day it was Downey. It was still visible, visually identifiable, very easily identifiable. And so her mother was able to identify her. Also among the photographs in the suitcase, there were different scenes from the moors. So like they were able to kind of place.
These people are fucking idiots.
So dumb. Like he started out so smart, like really like above average IQ, a huge, very high IQ. So dumb. Just lots of things. But anyway, so they took lots of pictures and they tried to like match up the pictures with,
Yeah, in real life.
In real life. Yep. On the 21st of October, they found the badly decomposed body of Kilbride, which had to be identified by the clothing. That same day, already being held for the murder of Brady and Hindley appeared at Hyde Magistrates Court charged with Downey's murder. Each was brought before the court separately and remanded into custody for a week. They just made a 2-minute appearance and that was it. So, presented with the evidence of the tape recording, Brady admitted to taking the photographs of Downey, but insisted that she had been brought to Wardlebrook Avenue by 2 men who had subsequently taken her away again, alive. So dumb.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, we brought her to the house, but then 2 strange men took her. She was alive when she left. By the 2nd of December, Brady had been charged with the murders of Kilbride, Downey, and Evans. Hindley had been charged with the murders of Downey and Evans and being an accessory to the murder of Kilbride. And the prosecution's opening statement was held in camera. I think that means not in open court. I should have looked that up. And the defense asked for similar stipulation, but was refused. The proceedings continued before 3 magistrates in Hyde over an 11-day period during December, at the end of which the pair were committed for trial at Chester. I can't say this. It's spelled Assizes.
Sure. All right.
I'm going to say it. So a lot of the pictures that they found were taken by Brady, and they are of Hindley and her dog Puppet. And so a lot of the pictures that you see of her are at the moor with her dog. These beautiful, like wind swept, blonde hair and this little puppy dog. The examination required, they were trying to figure out how old Puppet was. So they took Puppet to a vet to do some like routine findings out to see how old the puppy was. The Puppet was a puppy in some of the pictures, and Puppet was older, and so they wanted to figure out like how far apart the pictures were taken.
Yeah.
But then the dog died.
Oh no.
In the care of the vets. Hindley said to her mother, "I feel as though my heart's been torn to pieces. I don't think anything could hurt me more than this has. The only consolation is that some moron might have gotten hold of Puppet and hurt him." You killed people's children. Like, I know it sucks that an animal died, but
I'm sorry. These people, I just don't understand.
I'm saying.
I don't understand how people can go through this thought process.
Like, I lost my puppy.
Somebody may have hurt him.
What?
A monster may have got him.
It makes me want to throw things, Ashley, is what I'm trying to say. I want to pick this mouse up and I want to throw it. Just want to throw it. So it was a 14-day trial. Not long. Dude, all they had to press play for this 16-minute audio tape. They had pictures. They had this little girl saying, "Yeah, they took me to this place all the time where you found all the bodies." Like, she basically pointed them all out. But, sorry. So, but Smith was the prosecution's chief witness here. Before the trial, though, the News of the World newspaper offered £1,000 to Smith for the rights to the story. The American magazine People also made a competing offer for £6,000. So it was like 20,000 pounds versus 120,000 pounds, respectively, in 2021. Right. Anyway, when Smith accepted the News of the World offer, its editors had promised additional future payments for syndication and serialization. So they were going to just milk this cow. He agreed to be paid £15 a week until the trial, and then £1,000 in a lump sum if Brady and Hindley were convicted. During the trial, the judge repeatedly questioned Smith and his wife about the nature of the arrangement. At first, Smith refused to name the newspaper, risking contempt of court. But when he eventually identified the News of the World, the attorney general at the time promised like this investigation, because they were like, you can't give information to newspapers. Like, we're in court now. Like, this is a trial. Anyway, so they said it was gross interference with the course of justice. If you tell me these two people did not get convicted because of him, I'm going to throw this beer can at you. So both Brady and Hindley entered pleas of not guilty. Brady testified for over 8 hours, Hindley for 6. He admitted to striking Evans with an axe, but claimed that someone else had killed Evans, pointing to your face. Because I'm so mad at you right now. Her face was so funny. Pointing to the pathologist's statement that his death had been accelerated by strangulation. Well, I hit him with a hatchet. I don't know who strangled him. Oh my God. That was his excuse. Wow. Hindley denied having any knowledge of the photographs, saying she was like looking out the window and didn't know any of this had happened. But then on the 16-minute tape, you can hear Hindley being a real asshole, to the kid. She was like, well, I was being coarse with the kid because I didn't want her to be so loud that the neighbors would be made aware. Like, okay, so you kidnapped her, knowingly kidnapped her. Didn't want her to yell. What did you think she was yelling about while you were looking out the window? So when she was being undressed, Hindley was downstairs. When the photographs were taken, she was looking out the window. She was always, when she was killed, she was running a bath. She was never in the room, never saw a thing. It's so disingenuous. It makes me very mad. So on the 6th of May, they deliberated for just a little over 2 hours. And they found Brady guilty of all 3 murders and Hindley guilty of the murders of Downey and Evans. So the death penalty was abolished. So they were given life sentences. Good. I really thought you were about to say they didn't get convicted at all. No, that would be. I would say throw things. Okay, so now they're in jail, but we're still missing Bennett's body. Everyone else has been found. So in November of 1986, Bennett's mother wrote to Hindley begging to know what happened to her son. A letter that Hindley seemed to be genuinely moved by. It ended, quote, I am a simple woman. I work in the kitchens of Christie's Hospital. It has taken me 5 weeks labor to write this letter because it is so important to me that it is understood by you for what it is. A plea for help. Please, Miss Hindley, help me. So a few days after that letter, police visited Hindley. She still refused to admit any involvement in the killings. She agreed to help by looking at photographs and maps to try to identify the spots where she had visited with Brady. And she showed particular interest in photos of the area around Holland, Brown, Knoll, and Shiny Brook. But she couldn't be sure. Yeah. So very cynical about the whole thing. Then in February of 1987, Hindley formally confessed to involvement in all 5 murders. So it took her a long time, 20 years. all 5 murders, but this was not made public for like a month. The tape recording of her statement was over 17 hours long.
Oh my gosh.
It was, but the police officer, the investigator, said it was, quote, a very well worked out performance in which I believe she told me just as much as she wanted me to know and no more. He added that, quote, he was struck by the fact that in Hindley's telling, she was never there when the killings took place. She was in the car, over the brow of the hill, in the bathroom, and even in the case of Evans's murder, in the kitchen. He felt that he, quote, had just witnessed a great performance rather than a genuine confession. 17 hours. A 17-hour performance. So they visited Brady in prison again, told him of Hindley's confession. He refused to believe it until they started saying, here are some of the details of the crimes that she admitted to. And he was like, okay, well, I'll confess, but on one condition, that immediately afterwards he be given the means to commit suicide, a request with which it was impossible for the authorities to comply. He just wanted to die, right? April of 87, that was when Hindley's confession became public. She said that she saw no possibility of release, and so she also said that Smith had nothing to do with it. He made a deal with the News of the World people, but he wasn't a part of the killing. So it exonerated him, even though it was like, you know, people were kind of sus about him. So Brady was sent to Ashworth Hospital, and so he was incarcerated from 1985. Following his conviction, he moved from Prison Durham, HM Prison Durham, where he lived in solitary confinement. He spent 19 years in the mainstream prisons before being diagnosed a psychopath in November of 1985. And then that's when he was sent to Ashworth Hospital. He made it clear that he never wanted to be released. The judge said his life sentence should mean life. There's no possibility for parole. He does not belong on the streets again. He needs to be in prison until the day he dies. There's no medicine for this person. There's nothing that you can do for him. So he became the longest serving prisoner in England and Wales.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. The guy before him had spent 55 years in prison. And then there was Brady. There was a forensic psychologist who ended up writing a book about Brady named Chris Cowley. He had lots and lots and lots of face-to-face meetings with Brady. He said in 1999, his right wrist was broken in what he claimed was a, quote, hour-long unprovoked attack by staff. So then Brady subsequently went on a hunger strike. He was really trying to die. But while English law allows patients to refuse treatment, those being treated for mental disorders under the Mental Health Act of 1983 have no such right if the treatment is for their mental disorder. He was therefore force-fed and transferred to another hospital for tests after he fell ill. He recovered, though, and in March of 2000 asked for a judicial review and the legality of the decision to force feed him, but he was refused permission. He said, Myra gets the potentially fatal brain condition whilst I have to fight simply to die. I have had enough. I want nothing. My objective is to die and release myself from this once and for all. So you see, my death strike is rational and pragmatic. I'm only sorry I didn't do it decades ago, and I'm eager to leave this cesspit in a coffin. Well, you don't get to die, motherfucker.
Wow.
You don't get to die.
Yeah.
You're going to die naturally. He made no apologies. He had no remorse for his actions. So Cowley was like, he didn't. This is what happened. This is what I did. I'm sorry that Myra was a part of it. That's probably the one thing he was really upset about. He said that he spent 20 years transcribing classical texts into Braille, but that came to an end when when the hospital took away his translation machine for fear it might be used as a weapon. He wanted to donate one of his kidneys to, quote, anyone who needed one. They didn't let him. And so according to this other writer, he said it was because of these attempts to express remorse were thrown back at him that he began to contemplate suicide. In 2006, officials intercepted 50 pills that were hidden inside a hollowed out crime novel that had been sent to Brady by a female friend. I know. So the mother of the remaining undiscovered victim, Keith Bennett, received a letter from Brady at the end of 2005 in which she said he claimed that he could take police to within 20 yards of her son's body, but the authorities would not allow it. He did not refer directly to Bennett by name and did not claim he could take investigators directly to his grave, but spoke of the clarity of his recollections. Oh, now it's clear. Okay. He, in 2012, applied to be returned to prison instead of being in the mental institution, reiterating his desire to starve himself to death. And then in a mental health tribunal in June of the following year, 2013, he claimed he suffered not from paranoid schizophrenia, as the doctors at Ashworth maintained, but just a personality disorder. But that request was rejected, and he stayed at Ashworth. After receiving end-of-life care, Brady died of restrictive pulmonary disease at Ashworth Hospital on the 15th of May, 2017. He died of natural causes, but that his hunger strike had not been a contributing factor. Because he had stopped eating and drinking for like 48 hours before. Nothing happened to him. So she was still in jail during all this time as well. And she ended up having an affair with one of the prison guards, Patricia Carnes. And when she died... Patricia Carnes was the one that scattered her ashes like 10 miles away from the moors, like by 10 miles away from the graves or something, like some crazy ass 10 yards or something. Hold on. I wrote it down.
Oh my God.
But I'm sorry, I'm going to find it because I rushed ahead. Anyway, so it was really, really close. 20 yards from the moors. And so Patricia Carnes scattered her ashes, but nobody wanted to fucking touch these dead bodies. When they died, they were like, mm-mm. So I don't know where they went to get these bodies cremated, but nobody wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Even all those years, decades and decades later, they were like, mm-mm. I'm not helping you bury this person.
Yeah.
I'm not touching them. So Patricia did that. So gross. Okay. I'm sorry. I skipped all over the place. So David Smith. Was not liked after all of this. He was considered to have been trying to profit from the murders, and so he was just a despicable person at this point. Maureen was 8 months pregnant during the trial. She was attacked.
Oh my gosh!
In the elevator where she and Smith lived, their home was vandalized. They received hate mail. Maureen wrote she couldn't let her children out of her sight because they were still very small. And then after stabbing another man in a bar fight because they were yelling awful things at him, Smith stabbed this man and he was, triggered, I guess. Smith was sentenced to 3 years in prison in 1969. That same year, his children were taken into the care of a local authority. Maureen moved to a single-bedroom property and found work in a department store, but nobody liked her. And so they all tried.
She didn't even do anything.
Your husband tried to profit.
So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, awful. So she had to go. She didn't have any support from her family. Her mother, however, supported Myra all through the trial. But she was not even a part of it, and nobody supported her. On his release from prison, Smith moved in with a 15-year-old girl who became his second wife, and he gained custody of the 3 children at that point. Yep.
Wow.
So she repaired her relationship with her mother and moved into another property after divorcing Smith and married a lorry driver, Bill Scott, with whom she had a daughter. They made regular visits to go see Myra. She loved her niece. Maureen suffered a brain hemorrhage, though, in 1980. And they allowed Myra to visit her in the hospital, but by the time she got there, she had already died. So just sad state of affairs. And then in 1972, Smith was acquitted of the murder of his father, who had been suffering from terminal cancer. So he got 2 days in detention or something. Anyway, he was exonerated of everything from of the Moore's murders. And that was written in a book by a biographer he co-authored the book Witness with biographer Carol Ann Lee. And then he eventually died of cancer in Ireland in 2012. So the Manchester City Council decided in 1987 to demolish the house in which Brady and Hindley lived and where Downey and Evans were murdered. So there's just this like nice little hole between these two houses there. And that is my story.
Oh my God. It's very depressing. I ran out of beer.
I
ran out of beer like halfway, and I was like,
God damn it.
That's very,
Don't cry.
No, I'm not crying. I hate to hear anything about kids.
I know. And animals.
Well, and animals. Definitely animals, but.
Yeah, and then you didn't have,
I didn't have what?
You didn't have.
Oh, yeah, I didn't have Kevin, but it's all right.
You didn't have Kevin, and then you didn't, yeah. It's New Year's. I got a new thing. I got a new toy.
Yes, we're almost like a legit podcast.
No. Don't say that.
We have
Don't
equipment.
Say that. We're gonna raise people's expectations. Keep the expectations low. And
what a goal for 2023. Keeping expectations low.
Dude, that's all I have to offer this year, right now. This first few months anyway. So anything that you have to remind people of?
If you mentioned show notes, so if you don't know how to see our show notes, I don't know if Spotify and all that shows it, but you can see them on our website. So if you're looking for the references that Kat mentioned, visit our website.
There's lots of pictures.
Yeah. Well, the pictures will be on our social media, but the show notes are for sure on our website.
Yeah.
On the episodes. So like us, share us, love us. Please continue to listen to us in 2023.
Yeah, thanks for hanging on for the 2 weeks. You got sick 1 week, and then
I was out of town.
I was just too much. It was just too much of a lot.
This is the end of the year. It was a lot, but we're here now.
We're here.
And if you send us story ideas, it would go a lot smoother.
Sure would.
So, and question of the week.
I've just given up on those, y'all.
We're just here, okay? So, anyways.
And we're here for you, though, too. So if you ever need anything, reach out.
Yes, message us.
Message us. We don't have carrier pigeons, but you can do all the other things.
You can message us on our website, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email, wherever.
The Twitters.
We're everywhere. I did create a TikTok. Haven't put anything on it, but we have a Case House Cat and Ashley TikTok. So, hey.
All right. We'll do this.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. We will see you next week. Until then, please be kind to one another. You never know what we're going through. You never know.
Yep.
So just be kind. We'll see you next week.
Bye.